Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Talmud Talks. I'm your host, Caleb Hendricks, and on this show, we talk about how to follow my main man, Jesus. Woo, woo, woo. Today, we're going to be talking about what to do with broken promises. That's right, broken promises. What do you do when it looks like the promise that God gave you is broken? What do you do, um when you believed and you received and the promise looks broken and dead? The scripture we're going to be using today is Second Kings chapter 4, and in this story it is between Elisha, the prophet Elisha, and an unnamed Shunammite woman. That's a mouthful. Shunammite, kind of a fun word. And what she does, I see this as a great model. She is a wonderful model, a wonderful and wise woman for what to do with seemingly broken promises. And what's happened here? Elisha, the prophet, the successor of Elijah, travels to Shunem. And here we see a wealthy woman showing really some good wisdom. Starting with verse 8, it reads, I'm using my handy dandy Bible phone. It reads, one day Elisha went on to Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived who urged him to eat some food. So whenever he passed that way, he would turn in there to eat food. And she said to her husband, behold, now I know that this is a holy man of God who is continually passing our way. Let us make a small room on the roof with walls and put there for him a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so that whenever he comes to us, he can go in there. So far, what's happened in the story? She feeds him once. She feeds him customarily. Then she makes a room for him. I love this story because of how relational everything is here. It all started with just a woman saying, "Hey, come get some food. Come on. You're that's a prophet. Yeah, I'll have him in my home. I'll give him some food." Um, and then it goes to he eats regularly. Then it goes to we made a room for this guy. And so this just shows it's progressive with God, and it's not a formula, but instead it's always relational. God is so relational. So what does Elisha do? But ask, of course, what he can do for her. Moving on to verse 11 through 17. This is where the promise comes in. One day he came there and turned into the chamber and rested there. So he's resting in the place that's been made for him. And that's just wisdom right there by this woman to see the man of God and decide to do something nice for him. That's not dumb at all. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, say now to her, see, you have taken all this trouble for us. What is to be done for you? Would you have a word spoken on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? She answered, I dwell among my own people. And he said, what then is to be done for her? Gehazi answered, well, she has no son, and her husband is old. Now, I think it's interesting that the servant is the one who saw that, what she needed. I think sometimes you got to be low to really see the need here. Um, and he said, call her, verse 15. He said, call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the doorway. And he said, at this season, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. And she said, no, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your servant. But the woman conceived, and she bore a son about that time the following spring, as Elisha had said to her. So He asks her um, if she wants a word with the leader, a king or a commander, and she basically says she has no need to be brought into his spheres of influence. Elisha, could get the ear of the king. He could get the ear of some leaders, and he seems willing to put in a word for her. But she says, "No, I live among my own people. I've got no quarrels." But the servant, like I said, Gehazi, does see um, the need or maybe the desire for a son. And so a son is promised and born in the following spring. So let's read on. Now she's got the promise. She has received the promise and conceived the promise. And let's see what happens to this promise. Verse 18. When the child had grown, he went out one day to his father among the reapers. And he said to his father, "Oh, my head, oh, my head." The father said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." So his head's hurt and something's wrong. Um, and when he had lifted him and brought him to his mother, the child sat on her lap till noon, and then he died. So here's what's happened, guys. Her promise has died in her arms. So the picture is, right, that God promised something. I received. She literally received, conceived, and then gave birth to this promise of God. And the promise died in her arms. It happened. The promise happened. You heard a word from the Lord. You're sure it was from God. Um, and it did come to fruition, but something happened along the way. Something went wrong. There's no longer life in this child. There's no longer life in the promise. The promise grew for a while and was doing well, but something has killed the promise, and it no longer grows. It no longer matures. It's stunted. And now, instead of thriving as it should, it's actually begun to decay and to rot because it's dead. It's when things die, eventually there's a smell, and it now doesn't seem pleasant to you. It seems horrible, and it's rotting. um and now at this point, your heart is troubled because you thought God gives good gifts. He does. Right, God gives good gifts. God's promises should not die prematurely. So what do you do? What do you do in this situation? When it just seems like the thing that God promised you, that you received, is now dead. And this Shunammite woman is extremely wise, I believe. Do as she does, take her example and follow it. Follow it to the letter. She's an extremely wise woman. Let's see what she does, starting verse 21. This is just amazing to me. It does not go in norms of our culture today, or their culture probably then. So the child died in her arms. Verse 21. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door behind him and went out. So at the place that she prepared for Elisha, she puts him in there. Then she called to her husband and said, "Send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, that I may go quickly up to the man of God and come back again." And he said, "Why will you go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath." And she said, "All is well." Interesting. Then she saddled the donkey, and she said to her servant, "Urge the animal on, do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you." So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her coming, he said to Gehazi, his servant, "Look, there is the Shunammite. Run at once to meet her and say to her, 'Is all well with you? Is all well with your husband? Is all well with your child?'" And she answered, "All is well." interesting again. And when she came to the mountain, to the man of God, she caught hold of his feet, and Gehazi came to push her away. But the man of God, Elisha here, said, "Leave her alone, for she is in bitter distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me." Then she said, "Did I ask my Lord for a son? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?" So, what's really important here to notice is that she does not voice her distress to not her husband, not even the servant of the man of God, but only to the man of God. She didn't, they all asked, and she said, "All is well." See, guys, if the promise is broken, go to the source. If I buy a new Ford truck, right, and something's wrong with it, why would I go to the Chevy dealer? I'm gonna go back to where it came from, to the source of it, to Ford, and I'm gonna say, "Guys, this is wrong. This isn't wrong. I need you guys to fix this." And under warranty, they're gonna be like, "Okay, we'll fix it." That's how things work, right? It's foolishness to go to somebody else. Um, so go to the source. And who is our source? Who is our source? It's God. By his word, we even live and have our being, right? We breathe because he spoke. Um, so don't go, don't give room for doubt in the counsel of friends and family. They're wonderful. Not even your spouse. Don't even go to your spouse. If she had told her husband what had really happened to their son, I don't know that she would have gotten her promise back. Um, Spoiler, she does get him back, and Elisha, the Lord, Elisha, through the Lord, um, does see the child raised again. But if she had gone to her husband and told her husband, I don't know that she would have gotten him back alive. He may have told her to do something in line with the fact that their promise, their son is dead, and they should logically, you know, start the burial process or whatever it is that they do. But instead, she goes to the source of the promise. Go to God Himself, who gave you the promise. Go to Him, and only before Him, only in His presence, is that a safe place to say what you really feel about the promise. You're probably, if your promise is broken and dead, something that you were waiting for a long time, you're probably upset. And only there in his presence can you really unload your feelings and desires like she does. She says, "Did I ask my Lord for a son? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?" It's there's a lot of you can almost see in the text just the heartbreak she has, the that her son is now dead. Um she could have gone to her husband. She could have talked to the servant of Elisha. She could have talked to her friends, her servants. She could have talked to all of these people. But instead she goes to the source. And we see in the text that Elisha does go to the son. He is raised up and given back to his mother. Um, so the question you have to ask during the death of the promise that comes up is, God, can I really trust you with my heart right now? And I'm telling you, He is the only place that your heart can really go. Yes, you can go to Him with your hurt. Go to Him with your problems. God's a big boy. He can take it. He can take it. Don't even go sometimes to your husband, your wife, your friend. Go to God Himself, the one who gave the promise in the first place, because you can trust Him, and He can bring something that died back to life. Until next time, I pray God bless you. Amen.